I've talked about this very often on this show, but I am somebody who has had a very long history of being in addictive relationships. And what we are going to talk about today is really the cost that you are paying for being trapped in these relationships and how to actually get out of it. Because let's be honest, they are ruining your life.
Addiction is incredibly difficult and it is far more pervasive than we think. It tends to be only brought up in circles where addiction is something that they feel safe to talk about. But unfortunately, unless we expand the conversation into our circles, recognizing how pervasive it really is, it still stays as this overwhelming thing that feels unbearable to do alone. And so what if you're in this bucket, or if someone you know is addicted to relationships and or is a love addict and or is trying to heal from that addict journey? What if learning about some of the things that we talk about in this episode might just save your life? That's what this episode is all about.
Hey, everybody, what is going on? It's Bianca.
Welcome back, Evolvers. It's Emilia.
You almost cut me off again there, didn't you?
I slow paused so
I
that
saw
I didn't.
that. Everybody wants a deeply meaningful, abundant, healthy relationship, whether it's an intimate relationship, whether it's a platonic relationship, whether it's a friendship, whatever the case may be. You can kind of apply what we're going to be talking about to any type of relationship, but we are going to specifically be talking about intimate relationships in this episode. Many people will not identify themselves as a love addict because the connotations of that are pretty significant, and nobody wants to be labeled as needy and clingy and incapable of living life on their own, and whatever the narrative is that your internal dialogue is having. But I started working with a client. Shout out to you. She saw a video that I put on TikTok. She DM'd me and we started working together. It's awesome. I've got a lot of clients from there, actually. It's pretty cool.
We love TikTok for that.
We do love TikTok for that. And I've been putting out more content on there about like relationships and mental health and so on and so forth. And this person DM'd me. We started working together, and I'm going to keep everything anonymous, but she had been in a 2-year relationship that had become very, very emotionally abusive from both of them. They both just triggered the worst parts of each other. Like, they just, good people, like, she seems like a really good person. She seems like a sweet person, but there are just some people out there that just bring out the worst in you. And her and this person very, very much were that. And she got addicted to the emotional roller coaster of the relationship and to the narrative of their quote unquote love story. They got together, they met, it was all chemistry and passion and fire and the burning flames of their loins and whatever shit. I don't know. Whatever. They got together insanely fast. They moved in together insanely fast. And everything just happened at warp speed. And they moved in together. They were fighting left and right. It was a really bad scenario, and they broke up, but they were still basically exclusively dating and having sex and getting into fights and then being like, no, we really should stop talking to each other. But then 3 days later, they'd spend 5 days in a row together, and they couldn't get out of it. And this client started working with me about 2 months ago. And the story that she kept telling herself was, I can't officially break it off with him until he leaves the state, because he's going to be leaving the state soon. And I can't end it. I can't leave him. I can't break his heart. I don't want to be without him, but I know that we're not good for each other. And I don't want it to really, really be over, because if he knows I'm dating other people, he'll never talk to me again. And it was a whole thing.
Wow.
This person left. And as I predicted, he's reaching out to her and she's still trapped in the cycle. And she is now trying to date new people, but she's having a hard time because her and her ex just recently split up. And now she's basically going through a detox of this person, a physical presence detox, but the emotional attachment is still deeply, deeply there. So many of us, it's not that same situation, but so many of us have had people in our lives that we know are not good for us, but we can't let go of. And believe me, me too. If you listen to our past episodes, it's so embarrassing. It really is. But whatever. I have compassion for myself. I've done the work on myself to heal this. I did it too. I was with a new person every single year. It's like it was my thing. It's like I'd date someone, it'd be terrible. I'd be single for a year. I'd date someone else, it'd be terrible. I'd be single for a year, and that was the cycle. So believe me, same. Love and relationships, they hit our brain on a deep level. I started listening to the book Social Intelligence yesterday by I think it's Daniel Goleman, the guy who wrote the book Emotional Intelligence. He wrote a book called Social Intelligence. I was fascinated by this. They did a research study. I think he said it was Harvard or Cambridge University, one of those two, one of the universities in Massachusetts. They did this study where they were trying to figure out like what mechanisms run in the brain. And it said that one of the things that the brain optimizes for during downtime is thinking about relationships. Our brain literally churns on relationships when our brain isn't activated by other things. It's like the number one go-to thing that like certain mechanisms in our brain go to. And I was like, holy shit, that's wild. So our brain and our entire neurochemistry is basically optimized for love and connection and relationships and so on and so forth. So how the hell are you supposed to have a healthy relationship when our brain is literally getting attached in these really destructive ways, even at times when it shouldn't, and even at times when it's so bad for us? You will never call yourself this, but I'm going to call you this because you've earned it through your work. You are really a relationship expert. Why does that happen? What is the neuroscience underneath that? What is the psychology underneath that makes us get so deeply addicted to other people, and especially the people that are really, really bad for us, and that we're bad for them, and vice versa?
Well, I think what's fascinating when we talk about the neuroscience underneath it is we start to really understand how much our brain it tries to optimize for belonging any chance that it can. And so even the perceived experience of conflict, our brain tries to avoid as much as possible. And so whether we're looking at let's just even talk about the ACC, the anterior cingulate cortex. The center of the brain where essentially it grows and it improves to the extent that you're willing to do the thing that you don't want to do, right? That part of the brain is wildly under talked about, or not. It doesn't get a lot of limelight because the amygdala, which is like that old reptilian part of the brain, and the hippocampus and the prefrontal cortex and the corpus callosum, all of these different parts of the brains are becoming more well known. And these little saddle parts of the brain that help us really understand how we work as human beings, it doesn't get a lot of limelight. So Number one, I know that it is very easy to become a love addict or a subset of quote unquote that relationship addict, because our neurochemistry literally works for us to do that and become that and to wire in that. And then when it comes to the context of our family systems, we develop these, I'm going to say cognitive scripts that help us remain in these thought patterns, identities, and personality types, if you will, to have our relationships to where we are ensuring that we are belonging or have that sense of belonging. But unfortunately, what becomes a byproduct of that honestly is really difficult to look in the mirror of when you recognize that, like your client, like many people that we've spoken to, you're in these really unhelpful, toxic cycles where you don't actually feel like you can do the thing that you really do need to do for your long-term health. Like, it's important, it's going to be healthy for you to leave that person, to get out of that relationship, to maybe in the complete opposite. And this is another type of a love addict, which is more of that love avoidant. And you seek out people who avoid closeness. Maybe the hard thing for you, like it was for me, was to actually learn how and do the thing, which is like you're not taught to do, which is actually become emotionally vulnerable, which is actually to set boundaries in a way that honors emotional closeness rather than emotional distance. There's so many different dynamics at play. And most people that find themselves in and out of relationships time and time again that have the same set of patterns, it's because their same scripting is happening. Their central nervous systems are wired as a result of their brain. And those ruminative thoughts that they keep tracking after again and again and again without interruption or without intervention, that just happens, right? And that's why CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, is so helpful when it comes to anyone that's trying to heal from their relational repetition, if you will, the dynamics and the patterns that happen and unfold within the context of their relationships. Because CBT, and I would wager IFS too, it also helps to really work on some of the root causes of why you might be in the patterns that just are consistently there. And it has maybe nothing to do with that initial person. It might have everything to do with the fact that you experience a severe trauma and the way in which your brain reorganized as a result of that trauma and the way in which your social sphere responded to that time in your life. It set the groundwork of your belief systems about what relationships mean, what it means to be a person in a relationship. So for example, there's a cognitive script that I know a lot of people have that is, it's in the realm of the rescuer, the caregiver. Well, this person always seeks to save the other person, right? Often at the expense of neglecting their own needs. And it kind of sounds like this partner has a little bit of that going on. And what ultimately this purpose at the surface serves is that you still have the ability to keep this person around, even though there's a part of you that is actually terrified of empowering yourself, taking responsibility for your own life, and actually detaching from that urge to fix or to save or to rescue this other person, because it feels a lot more comfortable for your central nervous system to be in that hero or heroine role, right? That caregiver role. Because back when you were younger, you were a parentified child and you only got love from your parents when you helped them, right? So it's these multi-contextual and overlapping components that are quite literally already happening at an unconscious level before your conscious awareness. That is why you keep repeating these cycles and why you find yourself in these relationship patterns that you're maybe not so happy or fulfilled with, and why you're not in a long-term, loving, healthy, and functional relationship. And so how we begin to heal through that and how we begin to really recognize, I think the first step, and this would actually align with, I want to say her name's Susan Peabody.
Yeah.
I believe she's a counselor.
Melody Peabody.
Melody.
Hold on. I'll find her right now. I know what book you're talking about. I read it. It was phenomenal.
I want to say she wrote Love Addicts, and she actually, I think she has different subsets of the different types of.
The book is called Facing Love Addiction.
That. Yep. Is it Susan or Melody?
I'll tell you right now. It's Pia Melody.
Okay.
We were both wrong.
That's so funny because I want to say there's another
There
author,
is.
Susan. Okay. All right. So either way, it aligns with whether it's Susan or Peabody or Melody or whatever, right? Like there are certain principles that the research continues to show how when you start to get interventions, right? The biggest strategies really kind of boil down to the following, let's just say 3 to 5, right? Number 1, how do you break a cycle that you know exists, but you don't know how it exists or you don't know why it exists? You can't. So number 1 is self-awareness. When you start to uncover your unconscious patterns, which is what we do at Evolve all the time, right? We do thought records with clients. We help them understand what is unconscious and bring it to the conscious. When you can understand what your patterning is, and specifically the unhealthy patterns in your thoughts and your emotions and your behaviors and how those all connect with one another, you can actually begin to have change and work towards change. Aside from that, though, a lot of the challenges underneath unhealthy relationships actually are rooted in unhealthy self-esteem, right? We don't know who we are. We don't have a sense of self. We don't have a positive sense of self. We do not have self-esteem, right? Cue all of those I need you to complete me thought patterns and cognitive scripts, or I can't be alone otherwise, right? Insert the blank, or I have to rescue you because otherwise, right? There's so many scripts that are here that are centralizing around how we do not have a strong, sturdy foundation that is the sense of self and thus the self-esteem that we build based upon that. And so cultivating a sense of self and self-esteem is one thing that we do at all the time. And I'm sure you're doing this with your client, right? Like without a sense of self-esteem, you can't set boundaries. You're always going to be lacking self-worth. And so you're going to always be looking in a pattern unconsciously, your brain, again, at how to try to make sure that that person stays within your life to validate your sense of worthiness, right? So outside of that, we all need to get better at the third one, which is developing healthy relationship dynamics. What does that actually mean? When you learn to, from that foundation of self-awareness and self-knowing, self-esteem, and developing, cultivating the sense of self, right? And then you start to question, okay, what are my core beliefs? What are my core values? What are my core aspirations? And you have this mutual sense of trust, of respect, of what healthy, quote unquote, is from a central nervous system and science and development standpoint, instead of what you deem as healthy because it was normal in your household growing up, right? Like you can actually start to cultivate boundaries that help long-term, not just continue to cultivate the sense of self, but cultivate healthy and adaptive functioning relationships, which helps you break free from those addictive patterns that you unconsciously are engaging in, right? Even the ruminative thoughts in between meetings or in between scrolling sessions, or how you engage with people in your world, right? And a lot of that is really difficult to do on your own. And that's why one of the most profound strategies that is out there is getting professional support. When you can do this, and you can do this with someone who actually knows what they're doing, someone who is licensed, who is a clinician, who is practicing and not just pretending, right? Someone who has a track record of this in their own life experiences as well, or they have a ton of failed relationships and they've taken all of the lessons and have the humility to say, hey, this is what doesn't work for this type, and has gone through these self-awareness strategies, has gone through the work of building self-esteem, right? And they know how to convey that in a helpful message to you. That professional and therapeutic support is freaking everything. Why? Because studies show that therapy and trauma-informed coaching actually creates that psychologically safe space that your central nervous system likely doesn't feel in relationships. And from there, you're able to actually feel what safety is in a healthy, functional, adaptive way. And then from there, you cultivate that sense of self, your self-esteem, boundaries, values, all that stuff from there out. You don't have this external pressure of forcing you to be someone that you're not. And so whether it be a one-on-one setting, whether it be a group therapy or coaching or whatever, like that's huge. And healing environments go so far in our central nervous system because it's literally rewiring us at those parts of the brain that when you're just in these patterns, they're not actually getting rewired. And so obviously, if you go to any type of practitioner, they're going to encourage you to do the last one, which is, I would say it's rooted kind of in that like mindfulness and emotional regulation, right? Really developing your emotional intelligence and underneath the umbrella of emotional intelligence is emotional regulation, right? Central nervous system, grounding, safety, mindfulness, understanding, again, to that self-awareness practice at the very beginning. What does it feel like to feel safe in your central nervous system? How can you become more aware of what your emotional triggers are? What are your coping skills? How do you deal with feelings of loneliness or that I'm going to be alone forever, fear, anxiety, all these experiences that come up when you are someone who has had a past of addiction to attachment over authenticity? So I'll give that.
Hey everybody, my name is Isaac. My experience with Evolve has been nothing short of phenomenal. The community, the Evolve Ventures Society, is just a group of people who are all like-minded and growth-oriented, and you can ask questions and get support from anyone, and it's a really private group and you can share and be open, and that's what I really love about it. Emilia and Bianca have been nothing short of phenomenal, honestly. The amount they care about their team members and their mental well-being and their mental health and improving everyone's self-awareness in terms of being growth-minded and growing to where you want to be. I could not have asked for a better place to be at right now in this point in my life. And yeah, have a great rest of your year ahead and keep evolving, everybody.
Can you dive quickly into the hot and cold nature of relationships and how that impacts our nervous system and how that makes people feel more addicted to the relationship? So like the reward cycle that happens when the relationship goes from like fighting to good moments to fighting to good moments, because I've had a lot of clients say that too. They say, but there's so much passion, and when it's good, it's so good. And I know that there's bad times, but like when it's good, I can't let it go, or I love them so much. Can you dive into the neuroscience behind that a little bit, and like what's happening in our brain when that happens? Because from my understanding of it and what I tell clients, that's not love. That is literally the underpinning mechanisms of addiction. Your brain is getting hooked on the ups and downs, kind of like a lottery machine of like, ooh, when is it going to be good again? Ooh, when is it going to be good again? And you're getting hooked on that cycle, which makes you think you love the person. Can you dive into that for a minute or so?
Sure. So oftentimes, like any of the types of relationship addiction can also be classified as emotional addiction, I would wager, and kind of go out on a ledge on that, because, or maybe not necessarily emotional addiction, but rather the rush of hormones that come as a result of specific thoughts that are had, and then therefore emotions that are triggered, and by way and large the physiology that's changing in neurochemistry that's shifting. So the hot and cold cycle, again, it is so much of your neurochemistry running muck. And so your brain is essentially getting addicted to those highs of dopamine and oxytocin when there's bonding and when there's closeness and when there's connection. And there's, I believe it's norepinephrine. I always struggle saying that. That also helps to hone in the lock of focus. It's well known and well researched when it comes to flow and high performance, as well as high pressure, right? So when you have this hone and lock in of focus, these noradrenaline hormones that are really sinking you into this one person, your brain essentially becomes obsessed with whatever that person or whatever that quote unquote experience is. And so your hippocampus is going wild, logging all these memories and literally like logging the context of your experience when it's good and blowing that up. This is where cognitive distortions start to come in. Your neuroscience starts to light up like a Christmas tree. You start to get addicted to those dopaminergic responses, essentially, that are quote unquote rewarding. So your reward system locks in and, like you said, hooks in to the moment that feels really, really good. And it's almost like that you become dazed in a euphoric sense. So there's a lot of euphoria that's associated with this quote unquote addiction cycle. And there's like I want to say it's like I forget the name, but it's like a latency period to where your central nervous system is kind of in that flutter. So that when the pain and or the reality that is actually happening, your brain kind of has this like distortion. And that's where those cognitive distortions are really helpful to address in CBT around what actually is happening. Because the low cycle, the cold cycle, is when you really start to hit those low moments that affect mood. That's where the depression, that anxiety, that rush of fear really starts to come in. So your amygdala at that time is really hijacking you and freaking out and saying, oh my God, things are the worst. But then there's a really interesting thing that happens. And I remember there was, I want to say it was an Out of the Mud event that you and I had gone into, when it comes to the infatuation cycle and the different cycles of relationship. When you're in a hot and cold relationship, you essentially cycle through like the first two. You never actually go into the full phase of relationship dynamics that then help you spiral upwards. You just go hot and cold, up and down, up and down. And your central nervous system essentially gets more hooked and focuses in on the lack of what your neurotransmitters aren't picking up on. Essentially those dopamine hits, those receptors that are picking up on all the quote unquote happy, good feels. And then will do whatever it can to avoid that pain and suffering that's on the lows. So the hot and cold cycles oftentimes get cycled through with, it's very well researched, and the research is continuing and it will continue to go on. But when it comes to the anxious and avoidant attachment styles, those tend to go beautifully hand in hand, because it's the classic, when the avoidant pushes me away, that makes me want them more, right? Because there's these weird cognitive flips that are happening in our mind, cue all those cognitive scripts that are telling us what that means. And what that means associates a whole flush of chemicals in our brain, which then activates our central nervous system into a fight, flight, freeze, fawn type. And for an anxious attachment style type person who's in that cycle and has only known that cycle, that's their quote unquote brain's cue to go seek out love, to go fill that gap, because the pain is excruciating. And again, that pain is triggered by the thoughts and the distortions that are cognitively present. And in all reality, it's not just cognitive distortions. There's also a central nervous system effect that's having a deep component. So when you do feel that attachment, there are oxytocin bonds or oxytocin hormones that are helping you feel that sense of bonding. But unfortunately, that body just goes into a whole shock when there's that absence, when there's that loneliness. So that's, I would say, high level. Yeah. Feel free to zoom in even deeper where you think is helpful for this.
Your brain is basically on heroin when you're addicted to somebody. This person is the problem, but they're also the solution. They're causing you pain, but the narrative is, well, then they're going to fix it. Your brain has associated them with the fix due to the high highs, and your brain is minimizing the low lows to the cognitive script that you're mentioning. It's a cognitive distortion called minimization. So when the highs are high, you're minimizing all the downsides. And when the lows are lows, you're magnifying this person as, well, they're the fix and they're the solution and they're the remedy. So you're basically getting caught in this cycle of pain and pleasure, pain and pleasure, pain and pleasure, all associated with this person. And then you idolize them. And you're projecting them into this like esoteric being that they aren't.
It's the halo effect. One of the things that clients that are in this all the time, we talk about the need to de-pedestal, right? There's a script or a narrative part that usually creates this person into so much of a better person than they actually are for them. And that puts them on a pedestal, which also tips the power dynamics within the relationship to where they feel like they owe that person something. And so it just adds to the addiction cycle. And one of the things that is so common in that, when you know the minimizing is happening, is, like I said, because the brain is overemphasizing those pleasure principles, that reward circuitry, and really logging that hardcore in the memory. And there's a distortion in the way from really logging the context in the hippocampi for the painful moments, because that halo bias, that halo effect, I call it deleting files. How often are you actually deleting all those little moments or pretending like they're not as big as a deal as they really are, right? Mm-hmm. And you find yourself conveniently forgetting all those bad moments. and or justifying and minimizing really how big they were, right? And if you ever have a friend that's like shaking you and saying, wake up, like this is actually really bad, you're a victim of that cognitive scripting and you're a victim of the addiction cycle. And it's fucking brutal. It really, really is, because it's not just anxious. It's also, you could be over codependent. You could be a drama addict in a nutshell and not realize that it's actually happening in all areas of your life. You could be a clinger. Like there's all these different things. So
yeah.
I
have one more question for you, and this will be quick. I know we got to wrap up. A false narrative. I don't think it's true, but I'm very curious as to what your belief is on this. A lot of people have the narrative that I can't fully move on unless I find somebody else, that the only way that I'm fully going to be moved on from the last person that I had this addictive relationship to is by developing a new attachment and a new relationship to somebody else. What are your thoughts on that?
I have dual thoughts. So number one, there is research to support that for some people, a healthy substitute is one of the most efficacious elements to help you, quote unquote, move through that healing and recovery cycle of breaking up or detaching or detoxing from someone. There is research to support that. Now, does that make me feel like or believe that a healthy substitute of a person, meaning removing the stimulus of that person and replacing that with another person, does that mean that I believe that that is the only thing? No, I don't. I know that that might be helpful initially as like a coping mechanism of distraction initially from that low, right? Maybe, for example, in practicality terms, this looks like when you just went through a breakup, maybe go on some dates, but like full well know that like there are boundaries and there are limits on that, or go on a friend date and have that be replacing your Friday nights that you otherwise would have spent with your addictive lover, whatever, right? Like that's a healthy substitute. That's what I mean by that. That is shown to help you move, quote unquote, on and help to recover from this addiction cycle. My personal beliefs, though, is that the brain will continue to find ways, very creative ways, to trick us into short-term pleasure-seeking highways, and therefore I don't think that using another person to help you get over one person is effective, and I certainly don't think it's fair to you or the person that's in that seat. And more often than not, I've had conversations with people where the other person that they're dating has no idea how much they're actually being used to help them, that person, get over an ex. And I just don't think that that's fair, and I don't think that that's ethical or moral, honestly. But that's my personal belief.
I fully agree with you. I fully agree. This was fire. This really was. This is something that you might not have directly experienced, but we've all had troubling relationships, and we've all had people or jobs or places or situations that we had a really hard time letting go of. And it is really hard doing that on your own, and it is really hard going through that experience, and you shouldn't have to do it alone. And if you're in a place where you're really trying to figure out, how do I navigate my own cognitive scripts? How do I help understand what's going on in my own brain and in my body and my mind? And how do I actually build really healthy relationships and a really healthy core sense of self? Evolve Ventures group coaching is launching next week. We are officially 1 week out from the launch of this incredible once a year event. Some of the spots have already been taken, so there's only a few spots left. We don't want you missing this opportunity to really heal from the things that are burdening you. Past members have said that this program changed their life in ways that they didn't even imagine. And if you are listening to this right now, it means that you get a special 10% off discount off of the entire cost of the program. So if you plug into checkout Evolve Listener, you are going to get a special discount code for the program. This is once a year. We only do one a year. It gets better every single time we do it. You are not going to want to miss this chance.
My goodness. One of my favorite things about this program is that we get to meet people who have been listening and joining this community. And it's a great way to dip your toe into a really powerful healing journey that you might have been on and alone in for quite some time. And so we get to meet you. We get to have you meet so many other people that have been on this growth journey that you didn't even know existed. And so if this is something that you are interested in, even if you're curious about, go ahead and take the leap, because it's a full money back guarantee. And worst case scenario, you're not for it. You're not for this group thing. And that's okay. Full money back guarantee. If you're not satisfied, no questions asked. So it's all upside. There's no risk. And we would love to see you in this program. So cheers to everyone who is already on board. And I'm so excited for the next episode and for group coaching 2025.
What's your episode suggestion?
My episode suggestion in closing is going to be the 390 episode, which is why can't I trust myself? I'm trapped. So many of us feel trapped because we do not have that baseline self-trust. And as a result, unfortunately, we end up going down the cycle of addiction because we put our trust into others. So listen to that episode and B.
401, the biggest ways relationships are ruined. We sincerely hope you enjoyed this episode. We hope you learned a lot, and we will see you next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.